When the mystery machine arrives at the ancient Elsinore castle, now a shadowy museum nestled in the European hills, none of them expect a mirror to become their worst nightmare. Velma uncovers an old legend: anyone who stares into the Elsinore mirror, vanishes. But when Daphne looks into it and her reflection doesn't return, the gang realizes this mystery is far from ordinary. What lies beyond the glass? The fog clung to the hills as the mystery machine wound its way through the narrow, cobbled roads of the European countryside. Towering above the mist stood Elsinore Castle, ancient, brooding, and now, according to the glossy museum brochure in Daphne's hands, a window into the forgotten centuries. The gang had been invited to its grand reopening after a decades-long restoration, and though they were used to creepy places, this one felt different. Zoinks! This place gives me the shivers already, Shaggy said, clutching Scooby as they stepped through the wrought iron gates. Ruro, Scooby whimpered. Even his tail had retreated between his legs. Inside, the castle's interior was breathtaking: vaulted ceilings, dark wooden beams, velvet-lined halls, and tapestries that whispered with the draught. The curator, a pale woman named Ms. Albrecht, greeted them with a voice as dry as the dust on the chandeliers. Welcome to Elsinore. Please, be cautious. The castle holds echoes. Echoes? Velma raised an eyebrow. Just a local saying, Ms. Albrecht replied, before gliding away like a ghost in heels. The gang split up, as usual. Fred and Velma began inspecting the historical displays, armor sets, faded portraits, and an entire section devoted to myths of the Elsinore lineage. Daphne wandered alone toward a roped-off area behind a stained-glass door. Something had drawn her there, something cold and magnetic. Shaggy and Scooby, ever loyal to their stomachs, sniffed their way to the castle's kitchen, where they found a chef more terrifying than any ghost, an old man with wild eyebrows and a cleaver far too large. Needless to say, they quickly backed out. Meanwhile, Velma flipped through an ancient journal on display. The handwriting was ornate and Latin phrases filled the pages, but one sketch caught her eye: a mirror, tall and oval, framed in serpents and roses. Beneath it, Speculum Elsinus. Do not gaze long. Back at the stained-glass door, Daphne couldn't resist. The rope had fallen, almost as if inviting her in. The room beyond was small, dark, and cold. In the center stood a mirror, not just old, but unnerving. Its surface shimmered with a strange, bluish tint, and the ornate frame matched the one Velma had seen in the journal. Daphne stepped closer. Her breath fogged the glass. She tilted her head. Her reflection did not. She blinked. Her heart skipped a beat. The reflection smiled, but Daphne didn't. She stumbled back, blinking furiously. The image snapped back to normal. Shaking, she hurried to rejoin the others. When Fred asked if she was okay, she simply said, "Yeah. Just a little dizzy." That night, the gang was given rooms inside the castle. Heavy doors, no TVs, and candlelit sconces made it feel more like a dungeon than a hotel. Shaggy and Scooby pushed their beds together and placed garlic under the pillows, just in case. Velma stayed up late, reviewing the historical texts she had photographed. One line repeated across several documents: "To know Elsinore is to face thyself. Beware the mirror that lies." Meanwhile, Daphne sat in front of her vanity, brushing her hair. Her reflection copied her every move, but there was no emotion in its eyes. It felt hollow, like a puppet mimicking her actions. Then, she noticed something chilling. Her reflection blinked before she did. The next morning, the gang met for breakfast in the castle's dining hall. Ms. Albrecht was absent. As they discussed their plans for the day, Velma mentioned the strange mirror and the legend she'd found. Daphne, pale and quiet, finally spoke. "I saw it," she said softly. "The mirror. But, something's wrong." "What do you mean?" Fred asked, concerned. Daphne raised her eyes. My reflection, last night, I swear, it moved on its own. Scooby and Shaggy gasped. Like, that's a big nope from me, Shaggy said, already inching toward the exit. Velma frowned. That matches what I read. The mirror of Elsinore was sealed away because people claimed it, took them. Took them how? Fred asked. Some say it trapped their souls. Others said their reflections walked away. Just then, Daphne stood and walked to a nearby mirror. Her friends gathered behind her. She stared into it. Everyone could see their reflections, except hers. There was nothing in the glass. Jinkies, Velma whispered. The silence was suffocating. Daphne stood frozen before the mirror. Her face pale, eyes wide, heart pounding. The others gathered behind her, unable to look away. The mirror, just an ordinary wall piece moments ago, now refused to show her reflection. Fred reached forward and touched the surface. It was cold. Too cold. Okay, Velma said, adjusting her glasses, there has to be a logical explanation. Lighting, angle, maybe the mirror is distorted. No, Daphne whispered. I felt it. I'm still missing. Scooby whimpered and buried his face in Shaggy's shirt. Ruro, ghost mirror. Shaggy, clearly uncomfortable, took a step back. Like, what if it's cursed? Or what if we're all dreaming? Has anyone checked if we're in a dream? Fred gently guided Daphne away from the mirror. Let's stay calm. We'll check that room again, the one where you first saw it. Wait, Velma said, before we go, I want to test something. She stepped in front of the mirror and waved. Her reflection waved back. Then she turned to Scooby. Go ahead, boy. Take a look. Scooby crept forward, ears flattened. He peeked into the mirror, blinked, then screamed. No! He bolted into the hallway, knocking over a suit of armor. Like, wait for me. Shaggy shouted, chasing after him. The rest of the gang followed quickly, finding the two cowering beneath a dusty tapestry. Velma finally calmed them down enough to explain. Scooby, she said carefully, what did you see? He hesitated, paws trembling. Scooby, not see Scooby. Fred and Velma exchanged glances. Two people with no reflections. Something was very wrong. Back in the dim library, Velma dove into the translated journals again. One passage stood out, those who gaze too long into Elsinus find themselves unmoored. Their essence, cast behind the glass. Once taken, the glass becomes their prison, and their reflection, their shadow. Meanwhile, Daphne sat by the fireplace, hugging her knees. Fred knelt beside her. I don't feel right, Fred, she whispered. It's like I'm not really here. Like I'm fading. You're not fading. We'll figure this out. We always do. But Daphne's eyes remained distant, fixed on the flames. Just then, a sound echoed through the castle, a whisper. Faint. Almost impossible to catch. It came from the corridor leading to the mirror room. Did you hear that? Velma asked, standing. Fred nodded. It sounded like someone calling. Daphne stood abruptly. It said my name. They followed the sound, torches casting long, shifting shadows on the stone walls. The hallway grew colder with each step. At the end, they reached the mirror chamber, ropes still torn, doors slightly ajar. Inside, the mirror stood unchanged. But this time, they saw movement. A faint figure behind the glass. It was Daphne's reflection. She stood there, eyes wide, hand pressed against the inside of the mirror. Her mouth moved silently, screaming words no one could hear. Daphne gasped and stepped forward. That's me. Fred held her back. It's not safe. I have to try, she said. She reached toward the glass, and her hand passed right through it. A ripple spread across the surface like water. Everyone gasped. Velma grabbed her flashlight and shone it inside. The room on the other side looked like the same chamber, but older, darker, twisted. The real Daphne was still with them, but her reflection was trapped in another version of Elsinore. Parallel dimension, Velma whispered. Or some kind of mirror world. Fred clenched his fists. Then how do we get her back? Before Velma could answer, the door slammed shut behind them. Bang! They spun around. Shadows danced across the stone. Shaggy and Scooby whimpered in unison. Then came the voice. Low. Whispered. Distorted, as if spoken through glass. Trade, 1 for 1, only one may leave. Velma backed up slowly. Did you hear that? Fred nodded. Loud and creepy. Daphne turned pale. What does it mean? Before anyone could answer, the torches blew out, plunging the room into total darkness. Something moved behind the mirror. And it wasn't a reflection. The darkness wasn't just black, it was alive. Heavy, cold, pressing from all sides. Daphne couldn't see the others. She could barely hear them. Fred? Velma? Her voice echoed in strange ways, as if the room had doubled in size. A flicker. Then, the torches flared back to life. Everyone was standing exactly where they had been, except Daphne. She was gone. Fred spun around. Daphne. Velma pointed to the mirror. Fred, look. Behind the glass, Daphne stood in a warped version of the chamber. The walls were cracked, draped in cobwebs. The ceiling was arched in impossible angles. Shadows twisted unnaturally. And standing beside her, was another Daphne. Identical. Except her eyes were wrong, hollow, black like obsidian. The reflection smiled at them. Then turned to Daphne. No. Fred shouted, slamming his fists on the mirror. We have to pull her out. Velma studied the frame, running her hands along the carvings. This thing isn't just a portal, it's a prison. It needs a trade to stay open. That's why it said 1 for 1. You mean it took Daphne because she saw her reflection vanish? Fred growled. Worse. She may have accepted the exchange without realizing it. Meanwhile, on the other side of the glass, Daphne was frozen. The air was thick and damp. The other Daphne moved with a dreamlike glide. Who are you? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I'm you, the reflection said with a grin. Or the part you ignore. What do you want? To be free, the reflection hissed. To walk in the sun. To breathe without being trapped in your shadow. It lunged. Daphne dodged, stumbling against a cracked column. She tried to scream, but the sound died in her throat. Back in the real world, Velma flipped frantically through her photos of the ancient journal. There has to be a reversal incantation, or a seal, something. Shaggy peeked from behind a suit of armor. Maybe we should just, break the mirror. Velma's eyes widened. No. If you break it, Daphne could be trapped forever, or worse, shattered with it. Gulp, Scooby muttered. Fred took a breath. We're going in. Velma hesitated. We don't even know if, I'm not leaving her. Scooby raised a trembling paw. Ah. Scooby, not going. But Shaggy stepped forward, surprising everyone. I'll go with you. Fred turned. You sure? Shaggy swallowed hard. Nope. But. Daphne's our friend. Velma nodded, adjusting her glasses. Then we go together. Fred, Velma, and Shaggy stood before the mirror. Its surface rippled like a dark pool. Fred reached out, and the glass welcomed him, pulling him through like water. One by one, they vanished inside. Scooby sat alone, staring at the now still mirror. Ruro, inside the mirror world, time felt unstable. The castle was twisted, like a painting warped by heat. Hallways turned back on themselves. Rooms bled into other rooms. And in every reflective surface, something moved, watching. They found Daphne hiding in the broken library, clutching an iron rod like a weapon. "Fred," she gasped, tears in her eyes. He ran to her, holding her close. "We're here. We're getting you out." But the other Daphne was not far behind. She appeared at the end of the corridor, her dress torn, eyes glowing faintly in the darkness. "You can't take her," she whispered. She agreed. "No, she didn't." Velma shouted. She looked. "That's how it starts." Then the walls groaned. The castle began to shift. Mirrors shattered and reformed themselves elsewhere. The air buzzed with electric whispers. "She's part of us now," the reflection hissed. Fred stepped forward. "Then take me instead." "No." Daphne screamed. But the reflection tilted her head. "A trade, accepted." Velma grabbed Fred's arm. "You can't. If you take her place, you might not be yourself anymore." Fred looked at Daphne. "Then we trick the mirror." Shaggy blinked. "What?" Velma smiled slowly. "He's right. The mirror responds to perception. If we make it believe something, maybe we can break its rules." "What do we do?" Fred asked. "Stand together," Velma said. "Like a reflection. All of us. We become the mirror." They faced the wall, imitating their stances from the real world. Every movement mirrored, synchronized, even blinking. And then, it worked. The mirror pulsed. The air vibrated. The other Daphne screamed as cracks spread across the glass, not shattering it, but opening it, like a door. "Now!" Velma shouted. They ran through as the reflection shrieked and dissolved into glass dust. With a blinding flash, they were out. Back in the real world. The chamber was calm again. The mirror, silent. Daphne looked at herself. Her reflection returned. Everyone stood still for a long moment. Then Scooby ran in, yelling, "You're back! You're back!" They laughed. Nervously. But something in the mirror flickered, unseen. Something watching. Waiting. The silence that followed Daphne's return wasn't one of relief, it was one of tension. Something had shifted. Though everyone was back, there was a chill in the air, as if the castle was watching. "Let's get out of here," Fred said, keeping Daphne close. "We need answers." Velma, still clutching the old records book, pointed to a narrow passage near the central altar. According to the restoration maps, this leads to the original quarters of Count Elias von Elsinore. The man who built this castle. The same one who mysteriously vanished in 1793? Daphne asked. Exactly. He was obsessed with mirrors. He ordered dozens installed throughout the castle. He believed they revealed the soul's true shape. Shaggy swallowed hard. Like, what if he turned into a reflection too? I hope not, Velma replied. But we can't ignore the possibility. Following the damp, moss-covered hallway, the group descended a spiral staircase. The air smelled of ancient dust and rusted iron. Scooby sniffed nervously, whispering to himself. At the end of the passage stood a decayed wooden door, leading into a circular library, the walls lined with mirrors covered in black cloths. At the center, an uncovered mirror with a golden frame reflected not the room, but a different space. This doesn't make sense, Velma muttered. This mirror isn't reflecting this room. It's showing another, an older version. Daphne stepped closer. It looks like the entrance hall, but untouched. No renovations. Then, something moved inside the reflection. A hooded figure. Face obscured. Footsteps echoed within the mirror. Fred instinctively stepped forward, shielding the girls. "Who's there?" The figure stopped, staring at them through the glass as if it saw them. And then, it spoke. "He who sees too much, loses what he loves." The voice was low and ragged, like metal scraping stone. Its eyes were two hollow slits. Velma stepped forward. "Are you Elias von Elsinore?" The figure seemed to grin, but not with joy. "Elias is fractured. Trapped between visions not his own." "What is this mirror?" Daphne asked. "The mirror of Elsinore is the anchor," it answered. "Forged with black silver and morning crystal. Shaped by blood and fear. An eye between worlds. Why does it trap people?" Fred demanded. "Because it was made to show the truth. But truth devours." Suddenly, the mirror cracked in 3 places. The figure screamed. "You've awakened him. What once slept, now walks." The library shook. From the ceiling, mirror shards began to form, floating in the air like magnetized shards. Scooby yelped and hid behind Shaggy. "Time to go," Velma shouted. They ran through the stone corridors, but the castle seemed alive. Doors slammed shut. Curtains billowed with no wind. Footsteps echoed, not theirs. "He's hunting us," Daphne panted. "No. He's showing us something," Velma said, suddenly stopping. Everyone turned to her. "The mirror isn't just a prison. It's a portal. Elias tried to see the other side, and got trapped. But the true maker of the mirror wasn't him. It was someone older. Like, someone from another world." Shaggy trembled. "Maybe," Velma said. "Or a broken reality. And if this guardian is using Elias as a vessel, he's just a reflection of the Creator." Scooby licked his snout. "And if the guardian escapes?" Silence. Daphne looked down at her own hands. "What if that's the plan? What if these traps are meant to force us to use the mirror, to open the gate?" Fred nodded. "And now that we've entered, maybe we can't close it again." Then they heard it. The sound of shattering glass. Behind them, a new mirror had appeared on the wall. It hadn't been there before. And in the reflection, was Scooby-Doo. But Scooby was right there, with them. Raggy. The reflected version of Scooby smiled, but his eyes were hollow. And behind him stood several warped reflections, Velma with no eyes. Fred covered in blood. Daphne without a shadow. Shaggy, multiplied in pain. And then, the entire wall of mirrors shattered in a wave of dark energy. The castle was no longer just a place. It had become a maze of memories, distorted and dangerous. The mirrors had fractured reality itself. Every corner now felt wrong, warped by something ancient, intelligent, and watching. Fred pressed his hand against the cold stone wall, steadying himself. "Stay close. No more splitting up." But even together, they felt alone. Velma held the book of Elias tightly, flipping through aged, crumbling pages. "There's a legend," she whispered. "About an order of mirror makers who believed reflections were windows to the soul. They forged one mirror, the Elsinore mirror, to find perfection. But what they saw was madness." Shaggy peeked over her shoulder. "Madness? Like, how mad are we talking?" "Enough to drive Elias to vanish. Enough to twist this castle into a living nightmare." Scooby whimpered. "Are our reflection bad?" They moved through a dark corridor, where every few steps a mirror shimmered to life, showing not their current selves, but twisted versions. Fred saw himself with cracked skin and burning eyes. Velma was older, hunched over, scribbling obsessively on a wall covered in formulas. Daphne wasn't there. Her mirror was empty. She stepped back, heart pounding. "Why don't I have a reflection?" she asked, voice trembling. Velma frowned. "The mirror might be trying to erase you. Or maybe you're becoming part of it." "No. No way," Daphne shook her head. "I'm me. I'm right here." But even as she said it, a strange static filled the air around her, like something was phasing in and out. Suddenly, a scream echoed through the hallway, long and guttural. Not human. A warping, broken noise that scratched at their minds. Fred turned sharply. What was that? They ran, following the scream, only to arrive at the grand ballroom, once magnificent, now decayed. The chandeliers above flickered erratically, as if struggling to stay in this reality. At the center of the room stood the reflected Scooby, the one from the mirror. It grinned with broken teeth and glassy eyes, and beside it stood more mirror doubles of the gang. "They're not real," Velma whispered. "They're reflections, echoes." "But they can move," Fred muttered. "And I think they can hurt us." The mirror doubles advanced, matching the real gang's steps with twisted precision. Fred shouted, "Run!" They darted through an archway just before the reflections lunged. Inside, they found a forgotten gallery, filled with covered portraits. Velma pulled one cloth away and revealed an oil painting, Elias von Elsinore. But something was wrong. His eyes were mirrors. "He never escaped," she whispered. "He became part of the mirror. Part of its curse." Daphne looked closer. "Wait, look at the inscription." Etched into the frame were the words. "Only the one who sees without seeing can shatter the chain." Fred frowned. "What does that even mean?" Velma turned, realization dawning. "It means someone blind to their own reflection, someone whose identity can't be mirrored. That's why Daphne's reflection disappeared. The mirror can't copy her anymore." Daphne's breath caught. "So I'm the key?" "Maybe," Velma said. "But that means the mirror will come for you. It knows you're the only threat." Suddenly, the walls trembled. A massive crack split the stone above, revealing a hidden chamber behind the painting. Inside, the original mirror of Elsinore, untouched, glowing faintly with a sickly silver light. As they stepped into the room, the air grew heavy. The mirror pulsed like a heartbeat. And then, the guardian appeared again. This time, its voice was softer. "You brought her here." Fred stepped in front of Daphne. "We're not giving you anyone." The guardian raised a hand. "I do not need to take." The mirror chooses. The mirror wants her. The room began to collapse inward, not physically, but as if reality was being folded. Daphne stumbled, voices echoing inside her mind. Whispers. Secrets. Regrets. "I see," she whispered. "It's not just a mirror. It's a memory trap. It feeds on who we think we are." Velma screamed over the noise, "Daphne! Don't let it define you. Fight it." But Daphne stepped toward the mirror. Her reflection was gone. Instead, the mirror showed all her past selves. Moments of fear, vanity, guilt, love. Then it shimmered, and shattered from the inside. A shockwave of silence spread across the chamber. The doubles vanished. The guardian fell to its knees and disintegrated into dust. And the original mirror of Elsinore cracked, splitting down the center. Daphne collapsed. Fred caught her. "Did we do it?" Shaggy asked, voice small. Velma approached the now broken frame. "I think so. The link is severed. The mirror is no longer alive." But she didn't sound relieved. Because behind the broken glass, something still moved. Just for a second, a shadow. Watching. And smiling. The silence after the mirror shattered was unnatural. Not peaceful, but expectant. As if the castle itself were holding its breath. Fred helped Daphne to her feet, her knees still shaking. Her skin was cold, and her eyes, different. Like she had seen something she couldn't unsee. "Daphne," he asked gently, "are you okay?" She hesitated. I don't know. I felt like I was everywhere at once. In all those reflections. And then none of them were me. Velma examined the shards on the floor, the fragments of the mirror of Elsinore still humming with faint energy. "We stopped the mirror from pulling people in, but something came out. I saw it. Just for a second." "Yeah," Shaggy said, hugging Scooby, "and I don't want to meet it at snack time, man." Fred looked around. The chamber behind the painting was still collapsing, but the rest of the castle had become oddly quiet. No more whispers. No more moving shadows in the glass. Just dust and cold air. But it didn't feel over. Daphne touched her reflection in a small, cracked mirror still hanging near the corridor. This time, her image was there. But it blinked a split second out of sync. Velma stepped beside her. "That shouldn't happen." Daphne turned slowly. "Then what's wrong with me?" Velma looked down. "It's not you. It's it. Whatever came out, it might be linked to you now." They emerged back into the main hall of the castle, where curators and staff, now free from the strange trance-like states the mirror caused, were gathering, confused and frightened. One man looked at Fred. "What happened?" Fred forced a smile. "You had a gas leak. The whole East Wing. Some people hallucinated." Velma added, "We sealed it. It's safe now." Daphne was already walking away from the crowd, toward the courtyard, where the cold European wind swept through the trees. The sky was clearing, just a hint of blue behind all that gray. Fred followed. "Daph. What's really going on?" She faced him, her hair blowing wildly. "When I shattered the mirror, I didn't just break glass. I broke a barrier. And now something's with me. Not haunting me. More like, watching through me." Fred stepped closer. "We'll figure it out. Together." She smiled faintly. "You always say that." Scooby and Shaggy joined them, Scooby licking Daphne's hand comfortingly. "Ruro, mirror ghost." "Not a ghost," Velma said, stepping out with the final shard wrapped in a cloth. "Something more ancient. Something older than this castle. This mirror was a gateway. A prison. And now it's open." Fred frowned. "So, we didn't stop it. We delayed it," Velma said. "But maybe that's all we ever could do." They all stood in silence as the castle bells rang overhead, midday, but it felt like twilight. Daphne stared at her reflection in the courtyard fountain. Her reflection smiled back. But she didn't. The gang sat together at a small cafe near the airport. The case was officially closed, and Mystery Incorporated had done it again. Sort of. Fred sipped his coffee. "Next time, let's investigate something light. Maybe a haunted carnival. Or a guy in a robot costume." Velma didn't smile. "I mailed the shard to a secure facility in Norway. No mirrors. No glass. Lead walls." Shaggy munched on a sandwich. "And I cancelled our museum passes. For life." Scooby nodded. "Ruha." Daphne was quiet. Fred leaned over. "Still with us?" She looked up. "Yeah. Just thinking." But her tea was untouched. And her reflection in the window, ever so faintly, blinked twice. Though the mirror of Elsinore lay shattered, its curse lingered. The gang walked away, believing they'd sealed the darkness. But Daphne knew the truth: some reflections aren't just images. They're invitations. And once opened, they're never truly closed.